Good morning, everybody. Today is May 1st, the first day of the Vloggy Vlogs. And today's title of the Vloggy Vlog is Testimony. So, I hope you guys have your coffee, because I know I do. And I have my beautiful, amazing cup made by my loving brother. Here it is. He made this, I think, in college. I hope you guys have your coffee. I hope you guys are ready for this. You know, I'm a little nervous going back through and watching all my old Red Brisk videos. The level of energy that I had growing up, I'm like, how did I have that much energy? Where did it come from? How did I do it without coffee? Because back then I never drank coffee. Ugh. It was just like, hopefully I can maintain this guy for you guys. So, I got my map of the world back here, and got my, I just got my own calendar, because I'm going to be running my own pallet business. Been making a lot of stuff out of pallets, and it's been actually going very well for me. So, if you want to know what that is, wait until after the video, and you can click on my DB and JB Pallet Creations channel, and I do a do-it-yourself video. I've only done one so far, because I didn't really know if I wanted to do it. And yeah, so you guys ready to get into the meat and potatoes of this? Let's do it. Let's go sit down. Another sip of coffee. Okay, I'm ready. Alrighty then, so this is actually the first day, okay? And again, oh man, it's so nice to see you guys. I haven't seen you in a very long time, and it's always good to just look at you guys for a second awkwardly. Mom, it's good to see you. Hey, I see you. How are you? You look beautiful today. Good morning, Mom. I love you. I'm always reassured that my mom's watched almost every single video that I've ever made ever, so I love you, Mom. A little background story really quick. My mom had me when she was 17 years old. 17 years old, can you imagine today? Imagine if you were 17 years old. Some of you might have had a child when you were 17. But imagine it, okay? Being 17-year-old, 1990, having a baby, and it was me. Whew, I couldn't even imagine. It was me. So, growing up, life was a little bit difficult. My mom and my dad, they didn't really get along. Then my brother came along. My mom and dad got married. My brother came along, and shortly after they got divorced when I was about 4. My brother was 1 years old, and so that kind of took a toll on Matt and me. And growing up through life, it was a little rough. And my mom went this way, my dad went that way, and my mom met a guy, and his name was Jim, and this dude from ages 4 to 12 years old mentally and physically abused me, and it was really hard, okay? It was very hard to deal with that kind of situation. So, growing up with that mental and physical abuse, I grew up a very angry person, and it affected me so bad that I still kind of deal with it today as a 27-year-old. Fast forward, the person that's always really been a really huge positive effect on my life was my grandma, and my grandma Lindgren, and she was probably one of the most, she always made me think outside the box, like what I mean by this, okay? And you can take this any way you want, but I was job shadowing my grandpa because I wanted to be a carpenter growing up, and he was a really good carpenter, and he was painting this thing on the wall. He was using a paint gun, and when he was looking up, his mouth was open, right? And he was like this. And so she asked me one day, she said, David, why do you think that when people look up towards the ceiling, why is their mouths open? And I started thinking about it. How many people, when you look up, your mouth's open? Me being, I think I was like 14, 15, maybe 16 years old when this happened, and it was like a pivotal point in my life, because they started asking all these random questions in my brain, like, yeah, why does that happen? Why do they call a lawnmower? Oh, because it mows the lawn. I was like, in my brain, I was just like starting to put stuff together, and I was a weird kid growing up. Lawnmowers? I don't know. But I started thinking more deeply than I ever have in my life, and I never really thought about stuff like that before in a way to where that was just a huge pivotal point. I know it sounds really dumb, but that moment made me start thinking about other things other than my circumstances and everything else. Like I was like, why don't I read? Why don't I go outside? Why haven't I looked at the sky and saw how beautiful it is? And I was, 16, 17 years old. So fast forward to when I was 19 years old. My grandma randomly has a heart attack, okay? Randomly has a heart attack. She's flown down south, and she's in the hospital. And I'm the only one who didn't go down to the hospital. Out of my entire family on the Lingard side, I was the only one who didn't go down to the hospital. And my excuse was because I had to work. And now, all the knowledge that I have today, I wish I can go back in time, punch myself in the face, and go down and see my grandma, right? How many of you right now have done that? You're like, I just wish I would have gone. That's one of my regrets in my life. Well, it was one of my regrets. And so I was a little depressed about it, and my mom went down there, and she came up on a Friday, and just to see how I was doing, because I was the only one up here by myself, so she asked me how I was doing. I said, I'm all right. I went to work. Saturday came, and I had this urge that I wanted to go to church, okay? Now, I told my mom this, and she was, like, ecstatic. And the reason why she was ecstatic is because all of my life, I always thought churches were money scams. And I consider myself, as a 19-year-old teenager, I was an atheist. It's amazing to me who I was when I was younger, because some of the stuff that I thought in my head, you could tell I was a teenager, like how clueless I really was of life. So I thought I was an atheist, okay? I thought I was, okay? Just throwing that out there. I would always ask questions like, well, if God's really real, then why does this happen? If God's really real, why did that happen? Oh, the book's 2,000 years old. Why did this happen? And so why are we basing what we think off a 2,000-year-old book? This is me at 19 years old. And for some reason, I had an urge to go to church. I was really upset about my grandma, and I really wanted to get some answers, Yeah. So Sunday comes. At 8:30 in the morning, I'm getting ready, and I hate waking up early. As a 19-year-old, I hated it. So I was like, oh man, I'm already grumpy. And I didn't have coffee back then. I didn't drink coffee. So I went to church. The church started at 10. I went to church with my mother, and I can't explain it. My mom was the first one to go to this church. She used to go by herself, and when I asked her if I can go with her, she was just glowing. She was just beaming like a holy light. I went there, and the first thing I noticed about this church was that there was greeters, okay? Every single church I've ever went to, there was no one at the door greeting you. There was nothing there. And every time I've gone to a church, I dress the way I usually do, and people would be in suits and ties, and I was judged really hard. And I wouldn't know the words, and I wouldn't know anything, and I always felt uncomfortable at churches, okay? And the reason why I thought churches were money scams, to tell you the truth, if you were a member of the church, people would bring these buckets to your row. They would bring them to you, and when it got to you, you had to fill out a paper to be a member of the church. You had to put money into the envelope, put it in a bucket, and send it down to the next member of the church. And that to me was like, this is not who God is. God is not someone who wants you. If you want to be a member of our church, you have to pay to be here. And it kind of bugged me a little bit. It kind of bugged me a lot, because it's like, this is not who. So this is why I started turning atheist. It's like, this is church in itself. Okay, that church in itself kind of bugged me. It actually was the reason why I didn't believe in God, is because I was being judged. One, I didn't have money, and I couldn't be a member of a church, and the people that were at that church were not the nicest people. They weren't. And in my mind, if I go to a church, you're supposed to represent who God is, okay? Not represent yourself for image. And when I grew up, that's what I dealt with every day. Every church I ever went to, I tried like 6 times to go to a different church to try to find this God that they were talking about, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find it at all. The first thing I noticed about the church I went to my mom, it's called Praise Fellowship, and it's located in Russell, Pennsylvania. There was greeters there, And when I went there, they treated me already like I was part of the group. They're like, oh, thank you so much. You look new. Are you new here? I'm like, yeah, I am. They're like, oh, welcome to the church. Here's have a pamphlet and go in. So I went in and you turn right into the sanctuary. And then I noticed, the first thing I noticed is everybody was dressed like me. There was no suits. There was no ties. There was just normal looking people. And so I felt a little bit more comfortable. I was still in my brain. I was like, there has to be something. Something's different about this church, but it still has to be the same somehow. Money, churches are still money scams. That in my brain, that's what I thought. Okay. So I went in and we found our seats. We used to sit way in the back. Now we sit a little bit more closer to the front, but back then me and my mom, we sat in the back. They had these cool projector screens up and worship started, and I noticed that there was drums and a guitar and stuff, and people went up there and they started playing them. I've never seen this before. Usually with church you have to stand in a pew and you open up a book and you read these words that you don't even know, and it's really boring. And then when the pastor guy or the minister or the priest goes up there and he starts reading out of the book and you got to do all these weird things, you feel really uncomfortable and church becomes really boring. But for the first time in my life, I had a connection with a church. There was a band up there, there was people playing drums, and there was a guitar, and in my brain I was like, whoa, I'm actually watching a real life band play right now, you know? In my brain, I was 19, okay, so I was like, all right, I can get into this. And I was bobbing my head back and forth, and I was looking at the projector screen. I never sang. Even when I had to open up the books, I never sang. I would just read through. I would never sing. It was weird for me. So I was like, this is awesome. Halfway through the worship, all of a sudden I see on the screen it says, if you would like to bring your gifts, tithings, or whatever, come up to the stage and put your money in the bucket. And then I just started seeing people just go up, put their money in the bucket, turn around and come back to their seats, and they felt great. And I had this urge in my heart to do that, to give money to the church. And I looked at my mom and said, Mom, I think I'm going to give money to the church. And my mom, okay, she's like, you know, so she's just beaming, okay? And she knows how I feel about churches. So I reached in my pocket, and all I had on my person, on my body, was $1. Just one. And I looked on the back of the dollar and it said, "In God we trust." And so I looked up like this and I said, God, I'm going to trust you. If I give this church this dollar, the only thing I have in my possession, I want you to prove yourself to me. And so I took a deep breath. I walked up to the stage because I thought everybody was going to be looking at me. Everybody was going to be judging me like, who's this kid, you know? I threw the dollar into the bucket and I turned around and my life completely changed. Because when I looked around and I thought I was going to be judged and I looked at the people, they weren't looking at me. They didn't care. They were looking up. They were closing their eyes. Some were looking up, some closed their eyes, and some were just holding their hands out. And I felt so at peace knowing that I just gave that dollar to the church. It wasn't a money scam. No one told me to do it. I didn't have to pay to become a member of this church. So I did it, turned around, and no one cared. It was just a thing that I was supposed to do. And then I started walking back to my seat, and it was just one of those amazing, like, I kind of like this church, you know? And remember, at 8:30 in the morning, I thought that I was atheist. And then at 10:30, 10:35, almost 11 o'clock, I'm sitting here asking God to prove himself to me, and I gave the church $1 after I thought it was a money scam, and here I am thinking that church was boring, and I'm having the time of my life on a Sunday. It's never happened to me. Never. Not once. So this guy, the pastor of the church, his name is Pastor Rick, he goes up on stage and he goes, "Isn't God great? Isn't God good?" And everybody's like, yeah, great. I'm like, he's all right, you know. My mom's like elbowing me in the stomach. He said, "You know what? I feel so good today. How about you just greet someone, say hello to someone, and, you know, God be with you guys. Just go out there and say hello." So this guy, he was in front of me. He stood around and said, "Hi, are you new to the church?" And I said, "Yeah, I've never been here. This is a pretty cool church." He's like, "Hey, just want to let you know, God put you here today for a reason, and I just want to let you know that God is with you. God be with you, sir. God be with you." And it stuck with me, and I was like, I didn't know what to say. I was like, "Yeah, God be with you too, man." what that dude said to me, he doesn't even realize how big of an impact that was on my life. He has no idea, okay? And honestly, to this day, I can't remember who the guy was. I think it was his name. I don't know. I can't remember who he was. I can't remember, but I remember it vividly that the guy turned around. Like, I could see his face, but I can't remember his name. I want to talk to this guy one day, and I just want to talk to him and tell him, like, how much he's changed my life. I actually think he passed away, but I have to make sure. You know, I've been going to that church for a long time, but I've been looking around for that guy and I haven't seen him. So Pastor Rick's message, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it hit home. It hit home hard. And it was the first time that I ever experienced a pastor talking to a crowd, and it hit me. You know, he wasn't just reading out of the Bible. He was talking about real life experiences that related to the Bible and how it can relate to my life. And in my brain, I was just like, I asked God to prove himself to me, and I think he is. Now, remember, at 8:30 in the morning, all the way up until I got to that church, I thought I was atheist. I thought I was atheist. So, I go home. I didn't say a freaking word when I head back. My mom said, well, I said a couple words because my mom talked to me. She's like, what do you think about that? What did you think about church? And I was like, it was all right. And she's like, you liked it, you loved it. And she's getting all up in my face. And I was like, hey, Mom, it was okay. It was a really good church. And she's like, what do you think of going again? I'm like, maybe, maybe. We got home, I go straight up into my room. And because back in the day, when I was 19, the only thing I did was YouTube, World of Warcraft, and work. That's all I did. That's all I did in my life. So I went upstairs, turned my computer on, and something told me that I have to draw something. I have to be creative. I have to get out of my comfort zone a little bit. So I started thinking back in my life because I started thinking about God and what my experience was at church, and I couldn't just sit there and think about it. My brain was going on fire because I just asked God to prove himself to me and all this stuff, and this guy told me God be with you, and I was just like, I was beside myself, okay, because I was just like blown away. So I grabbed a blank piece of paper like this, okay, it was just like this, blank, nothing on it. And I started going back through my life, just like how I started with you when I first started this video. And I started thinking about all this stuff that makes me who I am. And me and my buddy Mike Navis. Mike, if you're watching this, what's up, man? Shouting out to you, buddy. Navis 101. He's on one of my favorites on this channel somewhere. But I love you, man. Me and him always saw these numbers. He always saw the number 47, and I always saw the number 44. No matter where I went, all through my life, every single day, I've seen the number 44. I don't know about you guys. Is there a number out there that you guys have seen, like, constantly over and over and over again? If you have, post down in the comments of what number that you've seen, and I can try to find a meaning of that number for you, and it'll probably hit home to you somehow, because the next couple of things that I explained to you changed and molded my life to make me believe in God with zero chance that I'll ever not think he's real, okay? My faith is so strong that I cannot ever believe that God's not real. Regardless how bad of a person I am, regardless how big of a sinner I am, how much people think of me, my faith in God will not waver. Okay, it won't. I can't. Ever since I found God, I've never thought he wasn't real. Ever. So, going through my life, and I started thinking of the number 44, I saw it so much that it actually became my football number. It became a track number. It just became a number that I was like really obsessed with because I've seen it everywhere. But I never understood why I saw it, okay? So, back in the day, there used to be this thing that before apps came out, you had this little flip phone, and you can text to a number. I think it was like 344343 or whatever, and it's called Cha-Cha. If you send them a text message and ask them a question, they'll send you back the answer. So I said, hey, Cha-Cha, what does the number 44 mean? And they sent me back an answer that I wasn't expecting. It means angels are with you. It blew my mind, okay? Because at 8:30 in the morning, I was atheist and I didn't believe any of this. Now it's like 1:30, 2 o'clock, and I just sent text Cha-Cha what the number 44 means, the number that I've seen my entire life, and it means angels are with you. This blew my mind. It blew my mind. So I wrote the number 44 in the middle of the page like this, and I drew a circle around it. Okay, just like that. And so the circle means protection, angels are with you. And I started thinking about my life and how rough it was and how much I protected my brother from most of this stuff. Now, his perspective of his life might be different, but my life and my perspective was I shielded him from a lot of things. Like, I was always in between my parents, fighting back and forth. I was always the one with mentally and physically abused by that guy. If my brother did something wrong, I would either take the blame for it or I wouldn't let him get punished for it. I like, in my brain, I always fought tooth and nail to make sure he didn't get in trouble. And I would usually take all the hits. I would take a lot of the bumps and bruises and bullets and blah blah blah. And so I started looking at it and I said 44 was me, but I didn't realize that angels were with me my entire life. And that was pretty cool. So I thought the 44 was me. The 44 was my number. And I thought I was protection. I was the protection for my little brother. And that brings me back to my next question. Matt, thank you for the cup and the coffee. It's been great. If you're watching this. So I started thinking about my brother. And I remember him talking about how his favorite number was 3. And I told him, dude, you know what you should do? You should double your luck and make it 33. That way I could be 44 and you could be 33. And so he's like, yeah, all right, cool. So throughout his entire football career, and his number was 33, which was pretty cool, because I was 44, he was 33. I know it sounds weird, but it was one of those really cool brother experiences that I've had. So, all my life I thought this dude was perfect. This is my perspective, okay? So don't think I'm mean here, but I always thought Matt was one of the coolest and most greatest kids in my life. My little brother, okay? He's not so little now. He's just my brother now, because if I call him my little brother, he'll punch me in the face and he'll probably knock me out. He never had to go through some of the stuff I went through. He went through it, he experienced it differently, and he probably has some mental blockage up here from the stuff that he went through. Like, he went through it just the same way I did, but I went through it a lot differently in my perspective. I went through it fighting and I was protecting him. So I always thought this kid was perfect, okay? Because for me, the stuff I went through affected my grades. It made me very angry as a kid growing up. It affected my relationships. It's affected a lot of things in my life. It's affected my relationship with my mother and him. Just because, growing up, if you don't see this stuff happening to him and you're taking all this stuff and you start not being mad at him or resenting him, you're just thinking, man, this dude's perfect. He doesn't even have a clue, And so I text Cha-Cha what the number 33 means. And it sent me back this message, this answer. It said it's called perfect angle. And it also means God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. Now, if you don't know how I felt about when I got that answer, I started thinking about Matt and the number 33, and the only things that were ever considered perfect in our entire lives is God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. The Holy Trinity. Remember, at 8:30 in the morning, I didn't believe in God. Around 10:30, I threw $1 into a bucket and asked God to prove himself to me. And now the 33 is telling me God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, and the only things that are perfect? Blew my mind. It blew my mind. So I wrote 33 on the page like this, okay? So then you got 44 and you got 33. It might be backwards for you, but this is what I'm seeing, okay? So 44 and 33. I started looking at that and it freaked me out, okay? So I went downstairs because the only person that I know who actually talks to me about God or anything is my mother. So I threw this in front. Do you remember this, Mom? Write down in the comments if you remember this. I threw it in front and said, Mom, what does this mean? And she's like, your guys' football numbers, 44, 33, I got nothing. So I showed her the text message that I got back from Cha-Cha, and she's like, I was like, well, let's go through my day, Mom. I said, so when I went to church, I gave the $1 to the church, and it said, in God we trust on it. And so I put, in God we trust, on the top of the piece of paper like this, just like that, just so I can remember, And then she's like, oh, don't forget that guy too. And I was like, oh yeah, he said God be with me. After when I came back and Pastor Rick told everybody to greet each other, and he said God be with me. And I was like, all right. So I wrote down God be with you. Like this. Okay, right under it. And I was like, that's cool, because I had to trust in God for God to be with me, and we were just talking about it. And then I was looking at it really hard, and the creative juices in my brain started just like going. And I noticed that each phrase has 4 words in it. 1, 2, 3, 4. In God we trust, okay? And I put a 4 next to it. And then I noticed that God be with you also has 4 words. Now, look at this. 44. Angels are with you. You have to trust in God for Him to be with you. 44. Protection. 8:30 in the morning, I was atheist. Now it's going on 3 o'clock, and my mind's being blown because I asked God to prove Himself to me. It shook every foundation that I thought I had. Okay? So I freaked out. I told my mom that she's like, you got something on you, sir. And I was like, what is it? Get it off. She's like, I don't know, but God's talking to you. You got to keep running with it. And I was like, all right. So I actually started noticing more. Like God still was talking to me. And I noticed God showed up once in each phrase, okay? Right here. You see the word God? And how many letters does the word God have? 3. So I underlined the God. And I put a 3 next to it. I underlined God in the next phrase, and I got 33. God, perfect, Jesus, Holy Spirit, Holy Trinity, 33. Now, I don't know about you, but a 19-year-old boy who asked God to prove Himself to you and you consider yourself atheist, this scares the living crap out of you, okay? Now I was telling Mom, like, what does this mean? Now I'm pacing back and forth like this, right? I'm just pacing back and forth. I'm going, oh my gosh, God's talking to me. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to do. And Mom, I said, what does this mean? You know God. You know God more than me. What does this mean? She's like, I got nothing. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I was like pacing back and forth, and I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing. What am I supposed to be doing with this information? So, my mom started telling me the story that I told her when I was like 4 years old, 5 years old, that me and my brother were one angel in heaven, okay? And I know this sounds really cheesy, but we were one angel that was so perfect in heaven that God split us into 2 and put me first. And I was like, and that's why you got me. And I said, and then you got Matt, and Matt came last. And I said, I'm here to protect Matt, and Matt and me are going to change the world. I told her this all my life, apparently. That's what she told me. And so I was looking at this, and I was going, that's crazy. So me and Matt were one angel. And she said, yeah. And in my brain, okay, me being atheist and asking God to prove Himself to me, and I started coming up with this. Everything that I was listening to, I was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. I'm like, really? I said that? Oh my God. You know, so I started looking at the numbers again. 33 and 44. And I started looking at it. If you reflect 33, you get EE, and that means everyone else. Everyone else. And I started freaking out, and I said, this is who I am. This is who I am. Angels are protecting me, God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, and everyone else. That's the entire world right there in one little message. You know, so I started looking at it, and I was like, Mom, you know how you told me that Matt and me were one angel? She said, yeah. I said, if you kind of look at it, it kind of looks like a person with angel wings. And so I said, she's like, I don't see it. I'm like, all right, here, hold on. I do like the most generic angel wings that I have ever drawn in my entire life, okay? And it was like this. Alright? Isn't that like a 12-year-old? So those are wings, by the way. So I started looking at it, and I was like, Mom, this is really cool. I really love that God's talking to me right now. And so I put God be with you on the top of the angel wings like this, and I put a 4 on there just to remind myself why I got the 4s up top here, because there's 4 letters. So then I put God be with you on the bottom, and I put a 4 down there like that, right? And then I said, I guess I'll put God on each side here just to remind myself why I got the 3s. I'll put a God on each side. And remember, I like to draw and I like being creative, so that's why I was just doing this. And this is what I got. Okay? So, now, remember that my grandma was down in the hospital, and I was the only one that wasn't down there. And my mom was getting ready to go back down. And I said, Mom, this is crazy. I said, this is just nuts. I said, this is the first time that I've ever heard God talk to me in this form. And I said, does he talk to you like this? She said, no, God will only talk to you the way you will listen. And I was like, oh my goodness, you know. So while we were talking, she was getting ready to go, and I was sitting down at the dinner table. I just started drawing boxes around this stuff because I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just drawing boxes around it. And then I said, oh my gosh, Mom. And she said, what? I said, you will have no idea what I just did. And she said, what? I said, I just drew boxes around this, and it looks like a cross is behind the EE4433. Now, remember again, 8:30 in the morning up to 10 o'clock, I thought I was atheist. Now, it's going on 5 o'clock. God has changed every aspect of my life in a period of one day. I asked him to prove himself to me. And I know now you shall not tempt the Lord, but I was desperate, okay? After I got this message, my life changed, okay? So I remember my grandma going down there, and I know she was in rough shape. I said, Mom, I want you to give this to Grandma. She said she's not going to know what it means. So I wrote down on the bottom here of everything that my grandma should be grateful for. Everything. And I told her what it meant and how my experience at church. I told her that she has to be grateful for her kids, because if she wasn't grateful for her kids, then me and Matt and all of my cousins wouldn't be here. And if they weren't here, then I wouldn't be able to go on with my life and blah, blah, blah. And if it wasn't for her, I would never graduate high school. I just told her all this stuff that she should be grateful for. My mom goes down there, she reads it, and somehow, some way, she miraculously, and I can't make this up, she miraculously got better, okay? She goes home, and she was home for Christmas. I go to this party, and the first time I've seen my grandma in a very long time, she doesn't say, hi, David, I miss you, hi, how are you doing? She said, why didn't you come and see me? And I was beside myself, okay? I said, Grandma, I really don't know. I started coming up with like really stupid excuses, like, I just can't do hospitals, Grandma. I don't know, and I had to work, you know, I can't miss work. I washed dishes for $7.50 an hour. And that was just, in my mind, the more I think about it today, the more I hate myself in the past, you know? But I was a kid. I was a kid, and I can't hate myself that much for it, you know? And she still had this thing on her. She held it with her everywhere she went. She loved that piece of paper. And so we found out that she was going to be getting surgery in March, and that she was going to have this extra time to be alive. And she was alive for an extra 4 or 5 months, right? And so I made it a goal to try to see her, but I didn't. I didn't get to see her all that often. And because I had to work all the time. Work kind of controlled me a little bit. And being a 19-year-old, I thought that's what I had to do. So I didn't get to see her. So she went down and to get her surgery. And I was the only one again who didn't go down to the hospital with her during that surgery. And it was supposed to just be a stent in the heart. That's all she was supposed to get, and she was going to be fine. It was supposed to help her control her heart attacks or whatever, you know. I don't really know what it was about, but she had to go down there. I went to work, and I just had this really bad feeling all day long. All day long, okay? I go home after work, I go upstairs to my room, and I was right about to turn on World of Warcraft, because again, my whole life was just YouTube, World of Warcraft, and work. That's all it was. I had this urge to call my mom, because usually my mom calls me to tell me how everything is going on with my grandma. And so I call her. I didn't get an answer. I called her again. I didn't get an answer. I called her one more time, and she answered the phone, and she was crying. Now understand, I rarely ever see my mom cry, ever. Probably never. And I hear her crying. I go, Mom, is everything okay? What's going on? And I start freaking out. And she said, your grandma's dying right now. The surgery didn't go well. And I was like, what? And she's like, she's dying right now. Hurry up and say something. And she put me on loudspeaker. And I said, in my mind, my mom said I talked for a long time, but in my head, it wasn't very long. I said, Grandma, I love you so much, and I just want you to know that, I graduated high school for you. I'm gonna go on with my life. I'll go to college. I'll do stuff with my life. I'll find someone. I'll settle down. Just don't forget about me. Don't forget about me. And during that moment, in the middle of me speaking, my grandma died. My mom said she's gone. She's gone. In the middle of me speaking. Now, I'm really sad. I'm really sad. I hang up the phone and I'm just crying. And I'm just crying and I'm crying. I'm upstairs by myself, and my whole entire family's down south with my grandma. And now I'm getting angry. I'm getting angry because I just had this, and God told me to write down all the stuff that she is grateful for, and I was so mad because I didn't go down, and I was a very angry person. I said, God, why did you do that to me? Why did you make me the last thing she had to hear? Why did you make my voice loud? I was just angry. I was the most angriest person I think I've ever been in my life. And, I didn't get the answer of why he did that for a year or two. And I was just so angry. I still believed in God. I still believed in him. I was just really mad in the beginning. And I started talking to people. I told them this story. I started spreading the word about how God is real and why this happened. And I remember watching something where it says, hold up your hand. Hold up your hand and really look at it. And from your pinky to your thumb, go like this. All right? Realize you're the only person in the entire world that can make you do that. And so I was looking at myself, and he said, realize that one day you're going to die. And he said, now put your other hand and touch it like this and feel the sensations. Feel that is a real life thing that you're experiencing right now. And you only have one life. You only have one life. What are you going to do? So this is what I used to do. I used to go and I would share my message that God gave me, and I would tell them, hold up your hand. I said, do you understand what's going on right now? Can you see what's going on outside these walls? Do you know who's driving on the streets right now? I said, no. The only thing you know is what's happening in this moment right now. And I said, that's how you know that God loves you so much, because he aligned your stars to have this moment with me so he can talk to you about how real he really is. And I said, and before you know it, this moment is going to be nothing but a memory to you. It's not going to be nothing but a memory. And that's all life is. It's just a bunch of memories that we are living out to understand how we found God. And this would shake people. And I would talk to them about how, I'm beside myself, and I have every reason not to believe in God, because God made me be the last voice that my grandma ever heard, and it bothered me a lot. One day, about 2 years later, I was telling the story, and some deep down in my heart said, you know what, David? I didn't do it to you. I did it for her. I started crying. I started tearing up. And the person I was talking to about my message, so like, is everything okay? I said, I just had a realization. God just told me that he didn't do it for me. He didn't do it to me. He did it for my grandma. Because I was the only one who didn't go down there to see her. And all my life, it's been a struggle. All my life, everybody told me I wasn't going to amount to anything. Everyone thought that I wasn't going to graduate high school, that I wasn't going to go to college, that I wasn't going to make anything of myself. And my grandma, the entire time, through my entire life, told me that I was going to be anything I wanted to be, and I could do anything I wanted to do. And I said, God made me the last voice that she ever heard to reassure her that I was going to be okay. And I never thought about that. I was so selfish and thought that God did that to me to try to teach me a lesson. And in reality, he was doing it for her. It was amazing. Alright guys, I think this video has been long enough. Now you know why I believe in God. I think this was a pretty good video for the very first day of the Vloggy Vlogs, my testimony. Now I'm going to ask you guys really fast. How many of you right now are at your most lowest of low? You hit rock bottom. And you don't see a way out. You don't know what's going on. You don't know if God's real. You don't know if life's real. You don't even know why you're doing what you're doing, waking up every day, looking yourself in the mirror and going, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. Where am I going? I need you to understand that God sees you and He loves you with all of your heart. If you want Him to prove that He's real to you, ask Him. And I have solid proof that He will shake every foundation. The very first video I made talking about how I was going to make the 90 days, the 90-day vlogs, I had an overwhelming response on my Facebook account. A lot of people were messaging me and talking about everything, and it got really personal. People really opened up to me, and I really loved that. And I hope none of you ever feel shy enough to do that. Don't feel bad about coming and talking to me if you can't talk about things. And we'll talk about stuff, or call people, talk to them about things. We're all in this world together, all of us, and we only get one life. And like I say all the time, today is the first day of the rest of your life, and you have to start living now. You have to. That's why I put in my 2 weeks, and that's why I'm doing this. And I just want to let you know, J.K. Rowling, the author of all of the Harry Potter books, she said this one thing that stuck with me forever. She said, rock bottom is a great foundation to start building your life. And I really took that to heart, because in Matthew in the Bible, Jesus talks about how you have to build your house on the rock. Be like the wise man who built his house on the rock, because the wind comes and it blows and the house still stands. Don't be like the foolish man who builds his house on the sand. When the wind comes and it blows, the house crumbles. You're supposed to hit rock bottom in your life so you can build a solid foundation of the person you are today. Life does not happen to you. It happens for you. And it's solid proof that I'm a person who thought that God was punishing me by being the last voice that my grandma ever heard, when in reality it was happening for me and for her to verify that I was going to be alright. And she passed away during my conversation. You don't know how at peace I felt after God told me that. I wish He would have told me sooner, but I really appreciate every single one of you that's come to my videos. If you think this video is going to help someone, share this video with them. Send it across the world. I don't care what you do with this video, but if you think this video is going to help someone, or if it's going to help you, share it. Please get this word out. I love you guys so much. My name's Dave Bennett, aka Red Brisk, and I am a free person. And we're going to change the world. Who's with me?